Hello, welcome, Jacob, and anyone who's watching this later. We're doing a live event today in our Discord. We have Ben here. Applause, furious applause. Ben Myers at Ben D. Myers, or benmyers.com. Ben D. Myers on Twitter. And then, so today we are continuing our work. What's up, Makar? We're continuing our work on the events.lunch.dev site. We've been doing a lot of Eleventy stuff and kind of playing with the data models inside of Eleventy. And today we're hooking up a contributors page for anyone who has contributed. And Ben has a really cool and clever way to get that data and get it into Eleventy. So Ben, take it away.
Absolutely. Thank you. Looks like Anthony's here too as well. Hello, Anthony. Welcome to the party.
Yo.
Cool. So thank you for the introduction, Chad. So we are using a bot in the events.lunch.dev community calendar repository. The goal of this bot, as you can see from their big heading here, is to recognize all contributors. And contributions come in many forms, right? Contributions can be code contributions. Contributions could be you're putting on an event. It could be you're recording and uploading a video for people to come back to later. It could be supplying design, right? Contributions come in many, many different forms. And if you think about it, the community calendar project, it really is a community project, right? You can get your hands dirty on whatever you want, right? Maybe you're adding some features on the Eleventy side. Maybe you're adding some content. Maybe you're adding some CSS, trying some new things with design, or maybe you're Matt and you're introducing a command line interface, right? We felt like a learning project like this, one that invites contributions, we felt like one of the best ways for it to be welcoming and inviting was to recognize all kinds of contributions, to be just absolutely generous with it. And one of the coolest tools in the industry for doing this is the all contributors bot. So real quick, the way this works, I've got the repository up, and if I go look at our pull requests, it's going to come up a little slowly, but if I go look at one that's just been merged in from our own Jacob Roman here, you can see that, Jacob's been adding an event, and when it was ready, I put a little comment in here, and y'all can also do this comment. This is totally open. You can put a comment like this that says, at all contributors, add so-and-so for, and then there's like a list of different kinds of contributions here. So because Jacob was adding an event to the calendar, I asked the bot to add him to the contributions list for content. There are so many different kinds of contributions. If I go back to our all contributors site, we can go to the docs page, and then specifically emoji key. This is super helpful. These are all the different kinds of contributions that are built into all contributors. And so you can see there's tons of these. And when you have the all contributors bot recognize someone for a contribution, the bot creates another pull request. Let me, go back to the pull requests tab. You'll see that there's these automated all contributors docs pull requests. So if I go ahead and pull this open, you can see that, yep, it's doing some fancy stuff with, it's updating a README, and it's updating a file called all contributors RC. And so then when I'm happy with the contribution, I go ahead and merge it in. And the changes will update this table that's here in our README. So you can see this is very front and center. You come to the repository, you can see legitimately anyone who's ever done anything for the community calendar is on here. And the idea here is that this should be super generous. If you feel like you have contributed in a certain way, you have. And I would invite you, if you feel like you've contributed in a certain way, I would invite you to go ahead and recognize yourself, because that is what we're about here, I think, right? Like, we want to celebrate people contributing to a project, especially a project that is meant for learning, right? So we have this great README.
Hey Ben, could I
Yeah.
ask you something real quick? Do you mind switching tabs and then coming back? It looks like it kind of froze up, but I want people to be able to see, or maybe moving your window just a little bit. I'm not sure, but it we have a little bit of what is it, artifacting going on, so I'm not sure people can actually see that page. Okay, we can see it a little bit better now.
Yeah. So you can see that we've got this lovely table here full of our contributions. Basically, anyone who's ever put on an event or done anything for the community calendar whatsoever is in here. And this is fine, right? This is great. I love that this is front and center. It's with the repository. You know, anyone can come to this repository and see, like, oh, if I do like anything, right, I'm gonna get a cool shout out. But Chan and I got to talking, and we were like, it's super cool that we could do this, but it would be really nice if we could also, you know, represent this somehow on the site. Where, like, this repository is itself to build a site, and that site is the events.lunch.dev site. Oh, look at that. It seems to have, like, frozen halfway again, I think. Cool. So we've got the site that we've been building out in Eleventy, and our mission is to create a page to recognize all of our contributors on here. And we want to do this using the data that we've already got with all contributors. This should be a very automatic process, I think. What I don't want is, you know, if I'm asking all, like, the all contributors bot to recognize, you know, Anthony for something cool that he's done, right? I don't want to have to do that in two places. It should just be like, we should be able to continue using the all contributors system as it currently exists, you know. So that right there is my goal. Do we have any questions about that?
Just kind of hop in with a comment. Like, I added an event, I think, like this last week, and like immediately popping up onto the contributors thing, it was like super cool. So it's like, yeah, I can definitely say that, you know, just getting that kind of validation. Like, it seems like such a small thing, but it's like, it's really not.
Absolutely. I think it's very much so within the culture of the lunch.dev community to be recognizing contributors in this way. And I think we can also do this on the Eleventy site. So to do this, I want to explore an Eleventy feature called global data. So I'm just going to pull up the docs here by searching for Eleventy global data. And you can tell I've searched this many times before. And specifically, I'm going to pull up this file, this page here called Global Data Files. Oh, look at that. Still super choppy, I think. Is it still choppy? Like, are you getting like a half screen? I'm sorry that this is so slow. Yeah, so here's the high-level overview of what global data is in Eleventy. We've previously seen how if we stick files in an underscore includes directory in our Eleventy project, we can have basically globally available layouts, and also what some people call partials, which are like fragments of HTML or fragments of our layouts that we can use in other layouts. If we stick those layout files inside an underscore includes directory, then it's basically globally available. Global data is the same thing, but for data. We can create files in an underscore data directory, and we can basically create global variables that we can access in our markdown content, we can access in our layouts, we can access basically anywhere we want. And I guess I can go ahead and give a quick demonstration of that. I've got the Eleventy site up. I'm going to kind of off screen create a new branch for this. I'm going to call this branch contributors. Oh, that already exists apparently. I'm going to call this contributors page. There we go. All right. yeah, so I've got our little source directory over here. I'm going to create a new folder called _data. And let's say that in here I create a file called hello.json. And inside, yeah,
Ben,
what's up?
If you don't mind me interrupting real quick, _data is like a special directory inside of an Eleventy project, right? Like
Yes.
this is it, like it has special powers just by having that name.
That's correct. Yes. Okay. So Eleventy, Eleventy will look by default in certain directories for certain things, right? Like _includes is one of those like magically named directories. _data is also one of those magically named directories. And these things are super configurable. You can change the name if you want in your .eleventy.js. But honestly, I prefer to just kind of use the framework's defaults for this.
Yeah.
I think that makes it easier to Google after the fact. And it's easier to like follow external resources, external like blog posts and stuff like that. So I'm going to keep the name _data unless we have any objections or any preferences.
No, that sounds great. I appreciate the clarification because I think sometimes it's easy to not know like what is special and what isn't, especially in these frameworks, like when it's new. But that clarification makes sense that is special, but it can be configured as well.
Absolutely, and I appreciate you calling that out. So we've created an _data directory that is by default the place that Eleventy will look to find basically anything that should be made into a globally accessible variable. I've created a file called hello.json, and inside here, let's just create ourselves a little object. I'm going to say it's got a property here called greeting. And inside here, I'll give it the string hello lunch.dev. You know, we're doing ourselves a little bit of a hello world with global data. And let's just, I guess, test that this works. So to do this, I'm going to go to, might need a screen wiggle, huh? So where we last left off, we had just created a hello.json. We had set that in this magically named _data directory, and that we had discussed that name is an Eleventy default. It's configurable, but we're going to stick with the default because defaults are cool. All right. The next thing I'm going to do is just to prove that our global data files are working, I'm going to pop open one of our layouts. And specifically the one I'm going to pop open is homepage. And we're going to see something a bit fun here. So I'm going to go ahead and inject interpolate. I don't really know what the best word for it is in the Liquid templating language, but I'm going to have a variable here. And so one of the things I want to call your attention to is that we named this file hello.json. And when you name the file, that's what decides the variable name that we're going to use here. So the contents of our hello.json file will get exposed as the hello global variable. And let me show you what that looks like here. I'm going to type hello, and then we have a property in there called greeting. So I'm going to do hello.greeting. And I've got my terminal on the other side. I'm going to run npm run dev so we can start our dev server. I'm going to pop open that localhost 8080. And you can see that right here, we've got that hello lunch dev. So what just happened here was we created a global data file called hello.json. And in there, we had a property called greeting. In our templates, we were able to just access that hello.greeting directly as just a global property that we were able to use. We can also do this in our markdown contents as well. So if I were to go to a schedule here, I'm going to say for our Eleventy at 11, actually, you know what? I'm going to get meta here. I'm going to find Eleventy contributors. And in here, I'm also going to say hello greeting. And for the sake of it, let's just inject it in the middle of the page. Now, if I go to, this should be, it's down here. It's listed as a past event now. That's fun.
Did our rebuild run? I'm gonna go check that.
It's running locally.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay.
Hurry, push it so we can tech.
Amazing. Yeah, so you can see that we were also able to take that global data that we had created and just kind of inject in the middle of our markdown contents as well. So that is global data at a high level. What we're going to do is we're going to take the information that all contributors provides for us, and we are going to expose that as global data. Any questions about that so far?
No, that seems to make a lot of sense. I mean, it's definitely a point of magic, I think, but watching you do it, it's not magic that's hard to understand, right? Like you put it in this magic, it's almost like Dropbox, right? Like you put your file inside this magic directory and now it's on the cloud and you can do stuff with it. There's a magical super land of underscore data, and that gets kind of injected to all the places that you might want to use that data.
Yes. Okay. So cool. The next thing to know about global data then, for the sake of our recording, because we're having some internet issues, the next thing to know about global data is that if your global data is a JSON file, that's totally fine. But the problem with it is JSON is inherently static, right? If you've got a .json file, it's static, which means if you want to make any updates to that global data, you have to go into that JSON file and you have to update it yourself. And we, as Eleventy wizards, don't want to have to manually update that. We already have it in one other place. We have a source of truth, and we shouldn't have to go in and manually update this JSON file just because a new contributor has been added. So another thing that you can do with your global data files is you can create a JavaScript data file. So here you can see I've created a contributors.js. And inside here, you can get your global data however you want. The end requirement is that you export that. So if we've got, some let data equals, 5, the end thing that we have to do is module.export equals data. This is the end goal. We have to export this, and whatever we export is what gets exposed as the variable. And you can imagine tons of different use cases for this. The one I usually see when there are Eleventy tutorials about this kind of thing is people will love to make like an API request, and then they'll use that API request, that data that's returned, to populate their files. So you could use that to hook your Eleventy site up to a content management system, which is pretty rad. We aren't going to do that though. We are instead going to source our information from the file system. So
could I ask a quick question real quick, Ben?
Yeah. What's up?
So in terms of this, like the way contributors is right now, so in underscore data, it's a magic directory, and it looks like it seems to work from the name of the file itself. So right now, our object is going to be contributors, and then, or I guess so would it be, is contributors now just kind of a flat structure where it's like, if you used contributors, that would be 5?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So let's put it to the test. Let's put it to the test. So I'm going to go back to homepage. I'm going to say contributors. I'm feeling gutsy enough to take this, to put this to the test. So I'm going to go back to our homepage. You can see we've got 5.
Nice.
So yeah, we were able to just export the value 5, and because this file was called contributors, Eleventy knew to assign the export 5 to the globally available variable contributors. So now contributors is 5, which, I don't know why contributors would be 5 in a production app. We're going to do other things with it. But yeah, just whatever gets exported is the contents of this variable, and the variable name is decided from the file name inside _data. There's a lot of magic going on here.
Yeah, well, this is a really clever API because it's extremely virtuous, right? Because you can't have 2 files with the same name on the file system, so there's an automatic level of protection, like in giving you, like it's guaranteeing an unused namespace, right? Which is awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's just also, it's kind of like an ergonomic thing. Like, we don't usually think about pulling from file names to get like variable names, but like once that connection's made, then like, oh, this is fairly intuitive at that point. Once you make that connection of like, oh, I have a file called contributors, and that's what exports the contributors that I access at. It is a little indirect, but I think it's one that I guess once it's pointed out, it stuck for me at least. Yeah, and so now we have this magic JavaScript file that can export anything at once, and that'll just be available for us globally in our Markdown or in our layouts. And so the next thing I want to do is I want to point out the all contributors RC. This file right here, and I'm going to format this as JSON. There we go. This .all contributors RC, this is a file that is generated and maintained for us exclusively from the exclusively by the all contributors bot. This is when it really comes down to it, that bot's single source of truth. And so every time it's opening up a pull request, it does modify the README, but it modifies this file. And this is where it gets all that information. It's just a JSON file. It doesn't have the JSON extension, but it is at its heart a JSON file. And you can see that it has quite a few properties. It's got this like files property. That'll tell you like, hey, which files should I update every time? Which Markdown files should I update every time we recognize a contributor? There's we'll see some fields down here at the bottom. If I scroll real quickly to the bottom, you can see that there's some configurations for like how many people should we recognize on a given line. All that stuff. Should we sort the contributors alphabetically, right? Like just formatting stuff. But the real important thing that we're interested in here is this contributors field. Again, all of this is maintained automatically by the all contributors bot, which is super cool. This field is an array of objects, and that those objects will have this is right here, this login field. That's your GitHub username. It's followed by your name, whatever your profile screen name is. It's got your avatar. It's got a link to either your GitHub profile, or if you've specified a different URL for yourself, it'll use that. So here we can see Michael's Twitter account is used there. And then there's the different kinds of contributions. So you can see that Matt right here is, in fact, a code tool, which is accurate. So yeah, this is the source of truth. And so my goal is I want to take this source of truth and I want to convert it into something that gets exported by our contributors global data file. Any questions?
No, that sounds cool. It sounds right. I'm excited to see the magic.
Awesome. It turns out, I have done a proof of concept here just to make sure that this works. It turns out this doesn't actually require a whole lot. So I'm going to go to our contributors file here, and I'm going to, first of all, const fs equals require fs. We're going to take in this file system module. And then I'm going to say const data equals fs.read file sync. And then we need to get, I think process.cwd is supposed to get, that's current working directory. It's supposed to get like the root level of this project, right? If we're running this at the root level. Yeah. So then process.cwd, and that's a method. I think it's called.
And just to be totally clear, this is all running like this. This is being run as a Node script, so it's going to be running at build time in a Node environment.
Yes, it's going to be run at the root level of the directory. So basically, wherever your .eleventy.js file is, I believe. So it's going to be running. It's going to be running at build time. So this is going to update and populate at build time. Like all good Eleventy things. Yeah, so if you're reading a file, you pass the path, and then you have to pass the encoding type. I always forget to pass the encoding type, but it's encoded as UTF-8. So we're passing that, and
you never forget for long, though.
Yeah, because you always get it as like byte strings, and so I'm like A4, I3, or whatever. Like it congratulations, you sunk my battleship. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna console log this data just so we can. And we have, oh, well, actually you can see that I forgot that we were still doing this. So we're exporting this data. That's what we're doing here. And then in our homepage, we are using contributors. So currently, this works as anticipated. It's taking the string from the file. It's just kind of barfing it out here, vomiting it out here. We've got
ship it.
This, yeah, it's great. Technically, this meets the objective. This meets the business requirements, product owner, and I would like to ship it now. So yeah, we've got this, and it's just a string. But we can do better. We can make this a little more ergonomic to use. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually wrap this in a JSON.parse.
Why bothering?
What's up, Makar?
I said, why bothering? It looks fine to me.
Yeah, looks fine. Ship it. It's good.
That's the attitude I like to hear.
Yeah, so here we can see that it is formatting this a little differently now because it's parsing as JSON and then it's re-stringifying it later. But we can now, what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to call this, I'm gonna just do data.contributors here because that was the property in the JSON that we could use. And now we have, it's just the array at this point, the array of contributors. We could continue to format this more if we wanted. I could say, now that I'm thinking about this, I actually prefer to break things out into multiple lines. So maybe what I'll do is I'll say const, then I'll destructure contributors from JSON.parse data. We could do that. And if I really wanted, I could like map over this. So I could say, we're gonna get just the string name or whatever. So now we have, a list of usernames if we wanted. We could format this however we wanted, get it all nice and ready in the most easy to use available format for a page. But I'm not going to just return the login. I'm going to return all the data. We have ourselves a lovely contributors file.
This is awesome. I'm curious your thoughts on, so some of that data might be valuable, like some of the metadata. And I'm kind of curious, like you get into the situation where you what is it? We have the contributors object, but then that has like a contributors field, and so it is kind of weird to do like contributors, but then there might be a point in the future where we might want some of that metadata. Like I can't say for sure what that is, but like maybe we would want to like have some of that data from the like RC, or the all contributors RC file. What's your like intuition on that? Should we just do contributors and then we could do maybe like another one later, like contributors meta, or like try to keep it all just the contributors object as it is and just deal with the double contributors? I like, this is mostly, I'm mostly just curious kind of as a pattern, because I find that I struggle with this a lot in just kind of dealing with JSON responses.
In this concrete scenario, first of all, we're no longer dealing with a contributors because we destructured the contributors property off, and that's all
right. Yep.
So yeah, in this specific scenario, if we're looking at everything that isn't contributors, like you can see that a whole lot of it is really just specifically stuff around the formatting.
Okay.
Maybe it would be helpful to know whether we're actively sorting the contributors alphabetically. Maybe, I doubt it. It might, we could conceive of a scenario in which it's helpful to know which markdown files get updated. But honestly, these properties are all specifically like stuff for the bot to care about, like when it's formatting the markdown files. So I looked at this and thought, absolutely none of. So in this case, the only thing I care about is contributors.
Cool. That makes sense.
And so if I only expose that in my global data, like I think that's the most ergonomic API that we can provide in this case, right? I'm pulling a variable called contributors. I'm expecting it to be a list of all my contributors. For me at least, that's the most intuitive thing there.
Yeah. I think that makes sense in this case. I mean, especially looking at the data, I don't think that we would necessarily, I agree with you that we wouldn't necessarily need this, because we can handle a lot of the, like, you know, contributors per line alphabetically. Like we can just handle that in the view.
Yeah, and we will handle that in the view.
Yep.
All right. Cool. Any other questions about our global data so far? All right. So the next thing I want to do is I want to create a /contributors page, one that's going to take all this global data and just spit out more or less the same table that we would see in our README. So to do that, we have in the past created markdown files, and these markdown files are empty. Like when we need, like when it's not like an event page, when it's just a page that just kind of does its own thing and has its own like layout and stuff like that. We've created like an empty markdown file. I want to try something a little differently this time, which is we've got a page here that's like a one-off layout kind of deal. So I'm going to create a file. This is going to be at the root of our source. So this is in source, top level of source. I'm going to create just a straight liquid file. I'm going to call this contributors.liquid. Because we called this contributors, we're going to, like, Eleventy is going to pick up this file and it's going to create a /contributors page. And I can prove that out by saying hello again. So I create that, I save it. If I go now to /contributors, you can see hello again. And let's see, what else do I want to do? Do we have any good layouts for this? We probably, yeah, page would be our layout for this. So what I'm going to do now is give us some good old metadata here. Layout is going to be layouts/page.html. I think, yeah, there we go. So we've got our header, we've got our background color. I think we've got some CSS in there. Actually, I know we've got some CSS in there. Cool. And so now we can start to iterate over our contributors. We can start to use our contributors in our templates. So I'm going to have, we're going to do a bit of liquid syntax here. Specifically, I'm going to say for contributor in contributors. So what this does, this is actually fairly akin to a for in, or actually probably it's like more like a for of, I think, in JavaScript. But it iterates through every item in this contributor's global data that we've created. It iterates through every item and it assigns that item to a contributor variable. And we close the for loop with an end for. And inside here, I'm just going to, we would probably more likely use like a list for this, but I'm just going to create a paragraph. And we can access things about this contributor. Like we could access the whole dang thing, the whole kitchen sink. If I do that and save and go back to our page, you can see that we've got, you know, one paragraph for every contributor. It's got the whole JSON deal. It's pretty cool. We could access individual properties of this. So maybe I just wanted to see the login, right? See your GitHub username. Now I come back and you can see that we've got our usernames all here. Any questions so far?
This is just so cool. Like, just take an RC file, turn it into data that you can then build a site with. It's amazing. Just
absolutely
bewildered.
Yeah. Cool. So we probably want to do something a little more complete though, right? Really truly recognize people to the same full degree that we would recognize them in the README. So I'm going to have an article, because an article is a great semantic way to represent just like a chunk of information, like something that could theoretically stand alone. You could imagine that we could conceivably recognize an individual contributor in a standalone way. We could use an article for that. So this article will have an image. That image, we can pull its source from the data. So that's going to be contributor dot, I want to say it's avatar underscore URL. You can confirm that by going to all contributors RC. Yeah, avatar underscore URL. And I'm going to surprise people here by, well, I'm going to not surprise them by providing an alt, but I am going to surprise y'all by having it be an empty alt. Does anyone know why I would do that?
What? Just feigning horror. I'm so interested. Tell us.
So, if you don't supply alt text, when you navigate to, like if I had not provided an alt property whatsoever, when you navigate to an image in a screen reader, the screen reader is actually going to announce the file path. So that's never helpful. You never, like, no one ever cares about the file path for that image, right? That's just not useful information ever for a user of your page. So we supply an alt text. And usually that alt text is something that describes the contents of that image. If you provide alt equals the empty string, what you hint to assistive technology is that this image is actually like, it's decorative. So you can envision, like, you know, let's say I had put in contributor.name here. And, you know, then we followed it up with contributor.name as like an H2. Well, now the name is actually duplicated. Providing the name of the person as alt text here didn't actually provide any meaningful information. This image exists, but it's actually kind of just duplicate information. It almost serves as decoration. And so I'm going to indicate that it is decorative by providing an empty alt.
Could I ask a question about this? Now, so I think that I totally hear the reasoning for this, and I think that it absolutely makes sense, right? You want that name read only once, and if you're not going to be able to see the avatar associated with the name, there's no point in just using the name and having it be read twice. I'm curious though, like if I'm coming to this code and I don't know that this was by design, that this wasn't intentional, and I'm not like super aware of like this practice,
Sure.
is there a way to explicitly say, no, I'm intentionally making this unreadable to the screen reader because like by design?
So you could use Aria hidden true for this. You could, but all like this at this point it's now superfluous, and alt equals the empty string is typically the like accepted way to do this. In part because a lot of people are going to be using like linters that will highlight like, hey, this image I don't like. I see that it doesn't have an alt attribute, so it'll complain about an alt, like a missing alt attribute, in a way that it wouldn't complain about a missing or available Aria hidden. So it's like just kind of let the alt be like the source of truth here. The single source of truth is my stance. You could indicate that for like you could use Aria hidden true as like communicating to developers, hey, this shouldn't be available, but I'm really letting the alt be the single source of truth.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think the question is really more of like a social one, right? Where it's like, someone coming along and looking for maybe like hanging like accessibility fruit and kind of making this like steering accidentally, but with good intentions, steering this away from the design, which is, yeah, more of a social problem, but I find it interesting.
Yeah, I super appreciate that. For people, I guess, in the accessibility know, so if you're already familiar with empty string is a pretty well-known way to indicate like, hey, this is decorative, we don't want to do this. But I definitely hear like for beginners, they would look at this and go like, hey, you should be providing information here. It doesn't necessarily convey that intent. It just looks like, oh, come on, you got so close. You provided an alt attribute and then you didn't provide any information.
Yeah,
So,
super interesting. Thanks for
yeah,
sharing that tip.
absolutely. So the next thing I'm going to do is I want to recognize people for their actual specific, like what kinds of contributions they made. So I'm going to create an unordered list in here, and we're going to do another for loop. So for contribution in contributor dot contributions, we can I'll show that off real quick. That's another like subfield here. We have, so our contributors is an array of objects, and those objects have a contributions property, which is an array of strings. And so we can use that array of strings here in another for loop. So I'm going to create a list item, and this is just going to be contribution. So it's not lovely. We really like probably should format this in some way, make the images perhaps not so big, but you can see that like, if I go over to like my contribution list right here, like we've got my name as an H2, we've got an unordered list of like all the different contributions that I'm currently being recognized for. And then we can follow this up with like, we've got Michael who's got stuff, and we've got Jacob, and like just everyone who's being recognized on our README currently is showing up with those same contributions here, which is pretty rad. Yeah. The next thing is though, let's find. I want to find actually Chan, because Chan, you've done some cool stuff, and when I show off your list, you're gonna see that like, hey, this isn't exactly coming off as like formatted, right? Like this right here, this pretty clearly looks like, well, it looks like a key, right? We probably should provide a more nicely formatted version of this, right? Maybe have it be like a more proper string. Maybe even show it off with emojis, like we would on the the homepage, or sorry, on the README. So, any guesses how we're gonna go about doing this?
Sorry, I lost you at the point. What was the second last thing you
Sure.
said?
So here, like you can see that this project management that we're recognizing Chan for, this project management list item here, like this is a pretty like camel case, very code way to write this, but it's not how we would actually write this on like a website, right? Like I would expect this to be like, capital P project space, capital M management. And that
So you need a regex.
we could use a regex, but maybe there's other things in here that I want to correct, right? Like I want to spell out the word accessibility, or perhaps if I go to Matt, I don't want it to say tool as accurate as it might be. Like maybe I want to say tooling. Maybe I want to provide kind of a full string there, right? Like maybe it would be nice to just like nicely format this. Maybe also supply some colorful emojis.
Or icons.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. So like on all contributors, does it just show the like in the README? It just shows the emojis, right?
yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't. Maybe there's some kind of like magic, like fun thing or whatever. But I mean, I would probably just go about it like with like map and a switch. I mean, that's probably not the right way to do it, but that's probably where I would start.
So we could absolutely do this way. I had another idea, which was, what if we continued to use global data? So I might have done a bit of work ahead of time here to create. Where is it? Oh, maybe. Let's see. It would be. What did I call it? I called it. Oh, contribution type. There we go. I created another JSON object. Has all the
Nice.
keys, as well as a formatted name, as well as the emoji.
Sweet.
So I went ahead and did this. I guess I'll just.
So this is like a legend then. Like you use the key that you get, and then there's some type of legend that you map that to like the ideal formatted word as well as the emoji key.
Yep. And I've now stuck this as contributions.json. We can change the name if this is confusing, but contributions.json inside our global data file. Global data folder. So now we are going to put my understanding of liquid syntax to the test, because I want to take this list item here, and instead of saying contribution, right, this right here, this corresponds to the keys in this object. So it might be, for instance, Ali, right? I want to convert it to, the emoji followed by the name. So let's start, I guess, with the emoji. Let's see if we can get that working. I want to say I can do contributions. Probably square brackets work. Let's see if this works. Do this, and let's just see if we can get it to pull up the object. Oh my god. Wow. I have not tested this part, so I'm glad that's working. Yeah. So you can see that like we now have our name, we now have our emoji. I'm going to, I think I can do a dot emoji here. Yes. Look at that. We're getting somewhere with this. Cool.
Cool.
So we can do that. And you know what? This, if you need a key for something, right, it's probably not the most intuitive system. So I'm going to, first of all, wrap this in a span. We're going to see what we're doing here shortly. I'm going to wrap this in a span, and then I'm going to follow this up with probably another span, I guess. And inside here, we're going to do, it's going to be the same deal, right? Contributions at our key here that we've got, right? I'm going to put a name. So now we have the emoji followed by the name here, the human readable name. And I also think that the contribution, like the emoji right here, I think that this is decorative. This counts, in my opinion, as a decorative icon. Therefore, I don't want to expose it to assistive technology at all. So I'm going to give it an Aria hidden true. So now if you're navigating to this list item with a screen reader, it's just going to say code, content, event organizing, project management, videos in this case.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah. I'm going to do one. Actually, I'm going to do a couple more things I was thinking might be cool, which is that I'm going to take this contributor name here. I'm going to wrap it in a link. And we have links for everyone.
Oh, nice.
Everyone has a profile field, which will either take you to your GitHub profile or it'll take you to some other URL that you've specified. So, here, I'm going to do href equals contributor dot profile. And now all of these are links. So if I go find Anthony down here, this should take me directly to Anthony's dev2.
Ooh. So rad.
Shout out to Anthony's dev2. Pretty cool stuff. I dig it.
Not you, Anthony. Just your dev2.
Just your dev2.
It's the better half of me.
I'm gonna do another thing for the sake of accessibility here, which is I want to label an article. I've got a blog post up about what happens, like, you know, I've got a blog post about Aria labels and descriptions, and I can maybe pass that blog post on. But when you label a region, a landmark element like article, it basically makes it easier for screen reader users to hop directly to it, because they have a keyboard shortcut or a view in their rotor where they can skip to different named regions on the page. But to be able to enable that, you have to name your region. So I want to basically give every article in here, every article in our list, I want to effectively name it your name, right? So I want to name this article, you know, ideally like it would have a name like Aria label, like Michael Chan or something, right? I want this to be something dynamic. And we've already got this information. It's contributor.name. Now, you could do contributor.name here. This would work. And I'll prove to you it works by saving, inspecting this. You can see we've got this Aria label. However, we are kind of doing don't repeat yourself stuff. Usually Aria label is best used when you wouldn't otherwise display a label, if that makes sense. So we would use it in cases where the name Anthony Campolo doesn't show up here, but we are showing Anthony Campolo. So we should instead use Aria to effectively reuse that label, and that's where the Aria labeled by attribute comes in. So we're going to do an Aria labeled by. I'm going to empty this out here. What Aria labeled by does is it takes an ID of some other element on the page, and it uses that element's contents as its label. So we're going to take this H2 here. I'm going to give it an ID. So now we need some sort of unique identifier here. Well, we have a unique identifier. That unique identifier is your username. No two people will have the same username, so we can guarantee that this is unique. And we can also guarantee a couple of extra things because GitHub likely is putting restrictions on usernames. So we know that this is probably like a pretty safe string to use as an ID, which is pretty rad. So I'm going to go to my contributors.liquid here, and I'm going to say that the ID is contributor.login. And so this will be, you know, Chantastic or Ben D. Myers or AJC Web Dev or whatever. And we can reuse that ID here in our Aria labeled by. And if you wanted me to like make that connection a little clearer, we can totally do that. Sometimes when I've got like a label, like an ID for my header, right? I will sometimes, if I'm using that header as a label, I will sometimes prefix my ID with H dash. That's just a little like a little convention I use. So let's go ahead and do that here. We can change that if we decide that's not what we want. But I've got H dash. So if this is working right, we would expect that this header, this H2, would have the ID of H dash AJC web dev. And if I inspect it,
and is the H just a hook into the name, the heading element? Is that the notion?
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
H is short for like heading.
Okay, cool.
So I'm saying that this is the AJC web dev heading. You can call it whatever you want, but that's just kind of the convention I use. So H dash AJC web dev. And you can see that here we got this Aria labeled by article, and it's labeled by the same deal, right? It's labeled by AJC web dev. So this article is pointing to this H2 to get its labeled. If I go into the accessibility pane, for our article, you can see it's got this Aria labeled by, and it's using that to pick up its name, Anthony Campolo.
Very
so,
cool.
Yeah, StreamReader users can now hop to the quote Anthony Campolo article, and they could do that for anyone in this list.
Very nice. I love how everything that you teach also has an accessibility lesson tied to it. It's great.
Absolutely. Big fan of that. Yeah. One last thing I want to do, kind of like, and I wish I had like more time to like do some formatting. We should absolutely format this. But one thing is, this is currently, if I zoom out, you'll see that like this is currently ordering everyone in the order that they were added to the all contributors RC. And this has what I think is the unfortunate side effect of putting the earlier contributors first. I think that that's not really how I would want to order things. I would prefer to order everyone alphabetically by their name. I think that's kind of like a fair system, I guess. There's never really a fair way to order people, but I don't know. For me, earliest contributors like that's not it for me. That's I don't feel like that's terribly inclusive. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to organize our list of contributors in order of their display name.
I like the idea of a random order at some point, maybe. Yeah. I mean, not now, but like that could be kind of fun too. Just like,
yeah. Like, the thing is, it would be most fun if it scrambled everyone every time you viewed the page. But Eleventy doesn't really do that, right? Because Eleventy's like, nah, everything like what happened at build time is the canonical truth. So, but that I love the idea of just like scrambling everyone every time.
Yeah.
So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do contributors.sort, and here we write a comparison function. So I'm gonna call this. I never know what to call these variables. So I think I'm gonna experiment with left and right. But basically, these are when you're sorting an array, you basically have to tell JavaScript like, hey, I know that your approach is to compare any given two elements in an array, and basically decide of these two elements which one should come before the other. And so you have to like pass it a function that takes any arbitrary two elements of the array. Sometimes I'll call these like A and B, but like I don't know, that feels bad as variable names. What do y'all typically call these? Is it like A and B?
Yeah, I'm gonna say like usually A and B, but I like left and right's fine too. It's kind of funny because like I feel like more often than not I'd probably just grab some like Lodash function like alphabetical or something that kind of doesn't mandate me trying to name variables well, but like having the actual like name of the function kind of describe what it's doing.
Maybe someday I'll show y'all the comparison function npm library I've written, which kind of solves this problem of like needing to ever like write specifically these comparison functions. Basically, you could just like pass a function that I'll explain another time. I think for now let's just stick with like what the JavaScript gods have given us. So if we were to take a look at left would be an individual element of this array, right? Of this contributors array. So it would be an object with, a login, a name, an avatar, URL, a profile, contributors, etc. There we go. Colorful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this name here, which I think it's got a name for everyone. It might just default. Yeah, if you haven't supplied a display name on GitHub, it just by default uses whatever your username is. So this is Rob right here. Rob hasn't set his display name, so it's just showing up as Chalk Eater. So I'm going to sort this array based on the value of this name property. I'm going to do so case insensitively. And the way I'm going to do that is, so this left, we can see that this has a name, and this right, it also has a name. I can return left dot, this is, so left dot name dot, God, what is it? What is is it locale compare? I think that's what it is. Well, it's popping up with some IntelliSense. So yeah, that looks like it. I'm going to compare it to right.name. And so this is a comparison function that's built in to the string class. It'll take whatever the locale way of looking at this of these two strings are. So this could change depending on like whether the like Netlify servers are here in America versus in Europe somewhere, etc. It could change based on wherever these are, but it's going to take these two strings and it's going to compare it alphabetically. It's also going to make the comparison case insensitive. So this is kind of like cheat mode right here. And if y'all wanted, we could even tighten this up somewhat so that way our comparison doesn't even have to take up multiple lines. So contributors.sort, it's going to compare these, it's going to sort these based on the value of their name property. If I come back to our page, you can see that it starts with Aditya, followed by Anthony, followed by myself, followed by Chalk Eater Rob, followed by Jacob, and so forth, all the way down. So these are now sorted alphabetically by our display names.
Ben, this
Pretty
is
cool.
This is amazing. I'm like just super amped on this. It's wild that like in an hour with conversation and everything, we were able to integrate with the library, which is already automating stuff for us, right? Like when you make a pull request, like it's doing like, so this is an extremely virtuous cycle because we have the automation, the bot's working, and then all of a sudden like you're gonna make your commit and then like your name is gonna pop up on the website. Like this is super duper cool.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a pull request for this. I'm going to assume it's safe to merge this in. As I've commented before, this page right here is incredibly unstyled, right? Like it's just using our default styles. So it's got a default style for like H2 and stuff like that. What I would love to see is I would love to see someone take this on and create kind of like a card-like treatment, maybe show a grid of cards, and hopefully make that like responsive and stuff like that. I'm going to open an issue that any of y'all can pull in if you want. But yeah, at this point, we now have a fully automated way to recognize our contributors, right? So long as we tag the all contributors bot to ask it to recognize a contribution of some site, of some sort, whenever we merge that like all contributors pull request in, it'll automatically update not just the README, but this page as well. So we only have to update things in one place, and it's mostly taken care of for us with the bot. And I just think that's really cool.
Yeah,
I think it's super cool that we can do stuff like this. And Eleventy is rad, y'all.
I totally agree. Hey Ben, thanks so much for this. Thanks everybody who hopped on and contributed ideas for this. Yeah, so I think this is good. This is a good place to stop. And then if you have any other questions, we'll chat it up in Discord or on this particular issue. I agree with you, Ben. I think this is good to merge, and then someone who is properly motivated by how unstyled it is on the web, can can take it that next step.
Absolutely.
But yeah, this was fun. I really enjoyed spending my Friday afternoon with y'all. Yeah, Ben, I don't know if you have anything else to leave with, but
honestly, I was just gonna recap kind of what we did with global data. If you want to like a quick TLDR. So TLDR. If you create an underscore data directory, Eleventy will use the files within to create kind of global variables. By default, it's going to use underscore data as the file or as the folder it looks for those global variables. But you can configure that in your .11.js if you really wanted. I recommend not. Just use underscore data. When you create a file inside your underscore data directory, Eleventy will take whatever is exported from that file and it will create a global variable with the file name as like the variable name that you can then use that variable inside your markdown contents. You can use it inside your layouts. You can use it basically anywhere. You could use it inside other global other global data files. You could use it in your directory data files if you wanted. If you're feeling adventurous. So yeah, this is a way that you can create just kind of a centralized set of data that might be static, it might be dynamic, pulled from a source like an API, whatever. It's just, it's aggregated at build time and then it's populated in your templates because Eleventy is badass.
I think that's a good note to end on. Hey, thanks again for your time prepping this, Ben. I really appreciate it.